from Gjensidige, and we will talk about our design system and how we managed to get that into Enonic XP. So these are the topics that we will cover today. A brief introduction to the company that we come from, a little bit of history, and something about our design system.
We will have a look at our web platform, and we'll have a look at how we implemented Gjensidige's new corporate identity in our digital interfaces with these solutions.
But first, these guys. I'm Bobby Westberg. I'm the discipline leader for frontend at Gjensidige. I have been there for 4 years. I started out as a consultant, but now I'm fast ansatt. I'm employed. Before that, I spent 7 years at a little company known as Enonic, and I helped co-develop the platform, the web platform that is running on Gjensidige today. But currently, I talk more than I code, so it's more this guy.
Yeah, my name is Thorstein Thorrud. I'm an architect and developer for Team Builders, which we will talk about later. I've been at Gjensidige for 3 years. Previously, I worked as a consultant for many years, and I inherited Bobby's technical debt.
You're welcome. Okay, so most of the Norwegians have heard about Gjensidige, and perhaps you knew that it's the biggest insurance company in Norway, and it's one of the best known brands in Norway, actually. And it's over 200 years old, so it's older than me. It has the main offices in Oslo S, right next to Oslo S. We have more than 4,000 employees spread over 7 countries. Most of them are based in Norway, but we also have a significant amount based in the Baltics, in Denmark, and also Sweden. Gjensidige is mainly working with insurances, but we are roughly 350 persons working with technology. We are spread across all the different countries that we operate in, but we also have a significant amount of consultants that we contract from Slovakia and Poland. And we also have a lot of in-house consultants that we contract in Norway and Sweden and Denmark. We are spread around many different teams that do many different things, everything from core insurance systems to databases to security to cloud platforming, all the way to what we know, front-end applications. Most of the teams that work with front-end applications are cross-disciplinary, meaning that design work there, editor, and developers in a happy symbiosis. So, a little backstory. It all started in 2019-ish with a dream from a man in the audience, Christian Munkvold. He no longer, sadly, works at Gjensidige, but I had the privilege to work with him for a few years, starting the platform. And the dream was something like this. We wanted to use Enonic XP, because we had that before. We wanted to use our design system as is, so meaning that all the other teams that build web applications and the ones developing the CMS integration, they should operate in the same way. There should be no like custom CMS-only design system. We wanted to write our views in React and TypeScript, and we wanted maximum control of everything like dependencies, environment, and the code. And we wanted to develop parts without running XP. And we were pretty strict with this. So that's a nice dream, eh? And today, this is actually running in production. We fulfilled the dream that we had. We are now presenting over 2,000 pages, spread across 5 different websites, spanning 4 different languages in 3 different countries. And there will be more. It handles roughly 13 million users per year, and the components spread across the websites and all the web applications. We have roughly 250 web applications. They handle something like 100 million interactions per year. So it's truly battle tested. So let's dig into our design system. It was kind of born as a little CSS file that we passed around the house more than 10 years ago or something, 11 years maybe. And it kind of worked, but that was the old days. After a few years, I think maybe 5 years, I'm not sure, it turned into a React-based library that the team started to use. During these 5 years, it has evolved a lot. Today, it's called Builders Core and is what we are using everywhere when you come in touch with Gjensidige. And it's fully React-based. Builders Core is used by something like 150 developers. We call them builders when they are working at Gjensidige or for Gjensidige. It enables these developers to have state-of-the-art compatibility, performance, accessibility, and browser consistency. Also having high flexibility and ease of use. All of these components are well documented. The documentation is open, so you can actually browse the documentation, but you cannot use the packages. So it's like semi-open. It also ensures that we can keep the corporate profile across all these applications and websites that we have and all the different countries. It also helps empowering designers and UX to talk with developers in the same language. All right, so let's dig into some concepts with some fancy animations that I didn't do, obviously. So we're based on atomic design, the principles of atomic design, and the first little thing is atoms, the tokens. Here we put in color styles, typography, shapes, sizes. This is put in one package. We have another package for icons, another package for fonts. With these atoms, we can build our components in React. So we get all the right brand stuff. Further, we can use components within other components, more complex components like this here, reusing the checkboxes that we already built in the input field here. And when we have all these are called molecules, these are atoms, we can create the organisms, which you might recognize as a part in Enonic XP. We version all our packages, and we never remove an old version. So after we publish 1.0, it will always live there, so teams can still use it for kind of forever. But we do a little fix or an improvement or add a feature or whatever we do, we release a new version so the teams can upgrade when they have the time. And having a design system saves money. That was very evident last year when we suddenly got, no, not really suddenly, but we got a new corporate profile. So colors were changed, a lot of our design was changed for Gjensidige. And then we could utilize this pattern that we already established to upgrade more smoothly. It still was a bit painful, but it would have been much more painful and lengthy process if we didn't have the design system so solid. And Thorstein will go into depth about that a little bit later. So perhaps you can go into some more technical details, Thorstein.
Yes, indeed. Let's have a look at what enables us to build and deploy this throughout the organization. And this is where builders comes into play. The first and foremost most important factor is the team. Team builders are both responsible for the design system, Builders Core, and our web platform, Builders Platform. We are cross-disciplinary with developers, designers, content designers that enables the organization to develop at speed without compromising on quality. By using the design system core in our web platform, we are eating our own dog food, making it a lot easier to make a functioning design system. The technical implementation of Builder's Core is built using TypeScript and React. It is hosted as a monorepo on GitHub using Lerna and NPM workspaces. This allows us to easily change one component that others depend on without having to manually change each dependent component. It also helps build and release all packages with ease. We build and deploy with Vite and GitHub Actions and expose all components, libraries, and design tokens as NPM packages in our private GitHub registry, as Bobby mentioned. The packages are versioned and everything is documented on our own website, Gjensidige.builders, using Storybook. And of course, there's a one-to-one relationship between the components used by developers and the ones used by our designers prototyping in Figma. So now let's look at the Builders platform. So what is it? It is a set of microservices, which in sum provides a solution for creating and hosting open editorial pages for any Gjensidige domain. It is also built as a monorepo, and it's hosted on Gjensidige's own cloud platform, Gjensidige Application Platform, which we call GAP. The most important content is the web server, Enonic XP, the CMS Content Studio, React components, which are server-side rendered with properties from the CMS content, and the navigation and footer are also exposed outside the platform as micro frontends to be used in web applications in the rest of the organization. So let's see how making a Gjensidige website looks like in practice. Our editors work in Content Studio. They fill the input fields per part with appropriate content, and the React component gets rendered with this content as React props. Then they can easily rearrange and add parts using drag and drop to produce the appropriate layout for any page type. So this is an example page on gjensidige.no. The site is served by Enonic XP. It contains a combination of editorial parts from the Builders platform and a React application developed by another product team. This one. The React app is shipped to our CDN and then embedded on the XP site. Although the page contains elements from completely different teams, it seamlessly fits together as we are all using components from the design system. And here we see a complete site hosted and developed by our private sales team. They need to ship their single page applications, but they still want to wrap those with the same navigation and footer used on the sites served by XP. As we ship the server-side rendered navigation and footer through an API, they can embed these on their site with the editorial content from Content Studio already in place. So let's see how the pages are served to the end user. First, our user will hit a varnish cache, which caches all sites. If it's not already there, the request will hit our XP server, which then asks our SSR server, server-side rendering server, which we call the Views API, to get all parts on this page. The Views API receives HTTP post requests with content from XP, which are then used as React props to render the components. And this is where the design system comes in. All React components made on the Views API use Builders Core. Tell us some more about the Enonic XP Rig.
Oh, I thought you'd never ask. I will also go into details on the Views API a little bit, so remember that part. So, the Enonic XP app that we run. I was not allowed to go into depth on it, so I will just make it brief. It all started with a rather designy approach where we sat down, we gathered the best content designers in the house, the editors, and the best developers, and me, not the best. No. And then we sat down and we started to sketch, and we drew on whiteboards, and we started to draw eventually in Miro, where we mapped out this ugly image. But it's basically all the parts and all the content types. And we spent a lot of time on this to make it the blueprint for how we develop the application. So instead of building stuff in the application, rolling it out into production, and then getting feedback that this didn't work, and then we break the data structures, we really thought about the data model first. Today we have more than 30 parts and over 20 content types. So it's a big application. It started with a dream. Now I say it started with a plan, but they go hand in hand. We wanted the TypeScript in all the controllers, and that's what we have. We didn't want to use layouts at all for multiple reasons. We wanted it instead to be part-centric. So a part, if you put it on a page, is always full width, and all the configuration on images and text that you see on the part should almost always come from the part configuration, not content. Editors were given two options to create pages. They are either articles or they are general. And based on your choice, you get a different selection of parts to put on it. And there's some generic parts you can put in as well. Additionally, we had some content types for storing structured data, like FAQs or insurance products. That's why we have 20 content types. We also use a lot of X data. Usually we put that X data on the site content, so we use that for global configuration, like menus, footer, etc., languages. We almost use no mixins. Maybe the last mixin was deleted not long ago. I don't remember. Kind of. And we have minimal dependencies from early on. We decided not to use libutil or libmenu. We built our own custom content types and our own scripts for writing the menus to have increased flexibility. And we have no friggin' time leaf. But we have some in the page controller, but that's a tiny amount. Okay, more on the tech. So it's also a monorepo, the Builders platform. It contains multiple folders. One of the folders is called views. Within that, we have all the React components that we use for the parts. And within the folder XP app, we have the actual XP app. Makes perfect sense. Central in the XP app is the react.ts file that we built. It uses libhttp request from Enonic to send a request to the views API that Thorstein mentioned. This request will go out to that API. It will not be cached because we rely solely on Varnish to handle the caching. In return, this API will answer with an object. The object will contain a list of CSS and JavaScript with full URLs that we can download and use on the page. We use that by page contributing all of these files for each individual part. And the HTML can be used as is. And usually it's just server-side rendered HTML without hydration, but we have support for hydration as well. After the page is done, we do a final response processor to inject the menu at the top and the footer at the bottom, since these are neither parts or in the page controller, since that was written in Timeleaf. And also we have a very cute cat when we deploy the application. That's one of the first lines of code we wrote. It's still there. The builder's cat.
All right, so in the beginning of 2022, we started the technical implementation of a brand new corporate identity in Gjensidige. So all communication from the organization, both analog and digital, were getting a complete design makeover. And what did this mean for us? Obviously, all components of our design system needed complete restyling. However, as this is a large corporation with a lot of solutions and a lot of teams, a scenario where everyone could just jump to a new design simultaneously was unrealistic. Thus, we still had to support all consumers of the existing design while supplying the new one. And this is how Builder's Core looked like at the time. We shipped all components as separate packages, where several of them was pair dependent on each other. This made it a bit cumbersome to use. And since we still had to maintain the current system, we had to ship the new components in new packages. Luckily, we took this opportunity to also do a major improvement on the technical side of our design system. To simplify the user experience, we merged all components into one NPM package. Thus, Builder's Core now only ships 4 packages in total. And some of the technical improvements we did were to change our bundler to Vite to make it a lot snappier, and also make the code pre-shakeable to make it work nicely with one package. We added a lot more flexibility with the compound components pattern to enable even more teams to use our components. We made sure we expose consistent component APIs. We give consumers access to the native HTML props, and we deprecated a lot of excess packages, and much more. Also, to keep everyone informed, we had an article where we updated regularly deprecations and breaking changes that were being introduced along the way. So, how should we ship all of this to our web platform so that all our pages change at the same time? Swapping parts in a moving train is always a challenge. And this is what our world looked like at the time. Gjensidige Denmark and Sweden was running on the Builders platform, but using the old design system. Gjensidige Norway was running on an even older Enonic XP Rig, not even using Builders Core. So that looked like this. And this is where we wanted to end up. All domains running on the Builders platform with the new corporate identity. So editors had to build pages with new design while still being able to actively maintain the current ones. Thus, it was critical to do as little changes to our content model as possible to avoid having to rebuild a ton of pages from scratch. To achieve this, we used the power of our Views API. We implemented new React components using the fresh version of Builders Core. With the use of feature toggles, we could switch which parts were rendered in our Views API. This toggle needed to work on 2 levels, one for the edit preview mode in Content Studio and one for the live mode. That way, editors could compose suitable pages with the new parts and even publish them without showing the customer our new design before it was ready. And then when it was time to actually go live, we switched the live toggle, rendering all sites in the new identity. It made it possible to change the design in all our XP pages in one smooth operation. Of course, it wasn't so smooth. Some problems along the way.
Well, we solved them.
Yeah. All right, we have arrived at our shameless bragging section now. Bobby, what can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so before we migrated to the Builders platform for Gjensidige.no, we had a site improve score on accessibility, roughly above 80. And then when we went to the Builders platform, we peaked over 90% on accessibility score. So that was very nice, a huge improvement.
And since I just read the news about this, I found out we have a pretty good carbon emission score. That was good news. And this is the Lighthouse report, which is also pretty decent. We are especially proud of the accessibility 100 score.
Mm.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any questions for you guys?
I have one.
Well,
So on the migration, what do you clean up after the migration look like? So you have to implement those stop goals and job flags.
Yeah.
yeah, but we try to maintain the data. We didn't change the data.
We didn't change the data, but each controller was, of course, we have to change the controller to be able to listen to which toggle was on, and then deciding which part to render. But we tried to sort of separate the code so that it was easy afterwards to just delete a lot of blocks of code. But there was a cleanup job afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had to account for that.
And then we could delete the old components. Yeah.
I have two questions. The first one, do you use Figma design tokens or incorporate something like that in your pipeline? And also you said that you could limit the parts available for the editors in certain contexts. Can you talk a little bit about how you see that?
So for the parts thing, it's based on the content type that you choose. And there was I don't remember when it came in Enonic, but you could limit a part to be available for certain content types only. We don't use that for all the parts, but we try to guide the editors as much as possible. So that was a nice feature. And for the Figma?
The tokens, you mean how we generate the tokens in the code, or?
No, for Figma.
Yeah, Figma has design tokens, and then the Figma is the source of truth for colors and padding, spacing, whatever. And you can incorporate that in your total pipeline. From your presentation, it seems like the storybook is the source of truth.
Yeah, that's the idea. That storybook is the source of truth. Maybe some designers disagree, but I don't know. But yeah, now we just generate the tokens actually with self-made code. We used to use style guidist, I think it was called before. But yeah, so the single source is pretty much a JSON file with all the tokens, which is then generated to all formats.
Yep.
Are you running like one Enonic instance for all the different countries?
No, we have separate instances for all domains.
And are you self-hosting it? Or are you...
Yeah, in Kubernetes on our cloud platform.
In Azure.
Yeah.